they worked with their group. An improvement I would make here is the peer analysis or the peer evaluation. After each group, the audience or all their peers, they could have identified the types of abuse, warning signs that were shown in the skit, a valid resource that was maybe recommended during the skit, and or how healthy communication was used during the skit. Right? Finally, objective 4 was to advocate against teen dating violence. And then looking at the graph here, the students did meet the objective. I actually went over it a little bit, but on the pre-assessment, only 35% of the students in the class of 23 passed, and 87% of students met the objective at the end. The learning experience here was the advocacy t-shirt project. Right? And the strength is, again, the students met the objective and they presented professional and all content was appropriate. An improvement I would make is to maybe make a larger poster board here, right? Some of the construction paper that we were using was a little bit smaller and they had maybe a hard time keeping all the content on one small t-shirt. Also, I would remove the 30-second timer from the rubric to allow students to freely express their values and their thoughts and beliefs. And overall results of the unit, let's break it down. So my unit goal was for the students to demonstrate proficient attitudes, skills, and develop healthy relationships to to develop healthy relationships and avoid unhealthy relationships. And I have 4 reflections for myself here. And the first one is that the students were engaged in class, which was really great as we had a lot of great conversations. And they all spoke honestly about their feelings, values, and beliefs. Another reflection piece I thought was important was the material was authentic and provided an extra source if students wanted to learn more about a specific subject. The third one was a variety of students volunteered to read or share. And before each material file, I made sure that I read to the class to show them that they're not the only ones reading. I wouldn't ask them to do something that I wouldn't do. So I would read and then I would ask someone else to read. If I saw the same hand going up all the time, I would wait 7 seconds. I would look for someone else's hand to go up. And I would even then ask someone, if no one had their hand up, then I would ask. I would be like, hey, would you please read for us? And a lot of times they said yes, and they read great. Right? And for the 4th reflection point is to follow through with consequences and rules of the classroom. And let's see, my collaborating teacher had a phone box. So the students were on their phones, she would take their phones away. And that was something that I did have to do throughout the unit, but with headphones instead of phones. Looking at all 4 objectives, objective 1, they did meet. Objective 2, they almost met it, right? And when we're looking at the almost met, I could have created a document that all the students could have added to, which really would have helped them refer back to later on in the lesson, maybe even during the performance assessment, right? For objective 3, they almost met the assessment or almost met the objective again. Here, I did create a good positive trends of learning from the prior lesson to aid in the skit creation. And then objective 4, they did meet the objective. And here, I have all the students stand and walk to each piece of artwork during the presentations, as I did mention a little bit earlier. All right, so being an effective health educator, what I've learned here. All right, so the first note is to listen to everyone's opinion, actively listen to everyone's opinion, and allow them the space to freely share their values and beliefs. Second, use authentic statements and questions to promote engagement. I thought this showed during the Lindsay Ann Burke story, and also showed during my own personal stories I told to the class. And yeah, authentic questioning and authentic scenarios really help create a personal connection for many of the students. Number three is to allow a sufficient amount of time for students to formulate a response and share with a partner or a group. Think, pair, share is very helpful for the students to build confidence in their own answer, whether it's from elementary or into secondary. Number four is to do not rush an assessment. If there is even 10 to 15 minutes left in the lesson, the assessment probably should be given the next day, right? The feeling of being rushed creates the students to just write down an answer that they may not think is correct, which could skew our data. We don't want them to feel all rushed, so give them the time necessary and push the assessment back to the beginning of the next day. Number five is to always assess formatively before giving a summative assessment. Sometimes you can give a formative assessment 2 or 3 times. You can formatively check for the student's knowledge before you give that summative assessment. Number six, my final statement here, is to progress or regress based on the student's current level of knowledge or ability. Here is a link to my spreadsheet containing all of my graphs and the data, and my resources as well that I used throughout the unit. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to my part 6 of my teacher candidate work sample in health education.